Hi, this is Mike from BandLab. With BandLab's included instruments and effects, you can make any kind of music you like. In this video, we'll show you how to make a speed house beat with fast-paced drums, big bass, and an epic breakdown. You can open this project yourself at the link in the video description. And if you find this guide useful, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell to be the first to know when new videos drop. I start by setting the project tempo to 150 beats per minute and the project key to E minor. The first thing I'm going to add is a drum part. I create a new virtual instrument track and set it to drum pads, new house. I add kick drums on each beat, claps on every other beat, and open hats between the beats. I then turn snap to grid off using the magnet icon and add a closed hat just after the 10th, 16th note. I then turn snap to grid back on. I duplicate this 1-bar sequence out for the rest of the 4-bar clip. To duplicate notes or clips in BandLab, hold Option on Mac or Alt on Windows and drag them over. I set this track to -6 dB to give me more headroom to add other elements to the mix. Next, I'm going to add a bass line. I add another virtual instrument track and set this one to synth basses, to funky crunch. I set this track to -11.2 dB. I sequence a bass line that plays E, F sharp, G, C, and B. It then repeats with an extra E an octave up, and the last note removed. To give this sound a touch of extra grit, I open the effects panel and add a distortion bit crusher. Now I want to give the bass line extra weight using a sine sub-bass. I create another instrument track and set this one to leads, G-funk sine. I set this track to -9.3 dB. I duplicate the MIDI over from the original bass track. I transpose this down an octave by selecting all the notes using Command+A on Mac or Control+A on Windows and clicking the -12 button. I also extend these notes by dragging their right-hand edge out. I'd like to make the drums more involved, so I decide to add a percussion loop. I open BandLab's Sounds and select the Loops tab. I set the instrument filter to percussion and drag Luminous 146 Drums 02 8 bars into the project. I truncate this loop for 4 bars by dragging its right-hand edge. I set this track to -2 dB. Next, I want to add a vocal to spice things up. In BandLab Sounds, I select the One Shots tab, then set the instrument filter to voice and the genre filter to hip-hop trap. I drag T-Val Hey Deep Voice into the project, positioning it on the last beat of the 4-bar sequence. I set this track to -3 dB. Now I want to make a breakdown section. I'd like to use a breakbeat in this section, so in BandLab Sounds, I click the Packs tab and enter Jungle into the text search field. I open the 90s Jungle pack and set the instrument filter to drum. I drag J165 Amen Chop 8-bar into the project. I set this track to -6.5 dB. I'd like this breakbeat to sound lower pitched, so I open up the editor panel and set its pitch shift to -1. Now I want some music for the breakdown. In BandLab Sounds, I select the Loops tab and set the instrument filter to brass and the genre filter to hip-hop trap. I drag detected key 148 B minor brass 4-bar into the project. I set this track to -6.5 dB. I'd like a riser to help transition the breakdown to the drop. In BandLab's sounds, I clear the instrument and genre filters and search for riser. I drag speeding riser into the project. I set this track to -6.5 dB. I'd also like a snare roll, so I search for snare roll and drag FL ISH Kit 02 122 FX Loop snare roll into the project. I set this track to -6.5 dB. I'd like to add one more element to help me flesh out the arrangement. In BandLab's sounds, I click the One Shots tab, clear the search filters, and search for rim. Hush Rim 3 is the sound I'm looking for, so I create a sampler track and drag the sample onto the first pad. I sequence a syncopated rhythm with rim shots between each beat, with an extra hit after the third rim shot. Now I have all the elements I need to make an arrangement. The arrangement starts with just the new house kit. On bar 9, the main bass sound and the percussion loop are added. On bar 17, the sub bass kicks in. On bar 33, the rim shots are added. On bar 49, we have our breakdown. This begins with just the brass. Then the breakbeat is added 8 bars later. The riser and snare roll build back up to the drop at bar 65. On bar 73, the rim shot is reintroduced. Remember, you can fork this project and make your own version of it using the link in the video description. Have fun!